Morning, everybody. I think Brian has summed it all up in a nutshell. Just a brief description of the foundation. It was set up in 2006, and the foundation has twin goals: to fund the best research and to provide practical assistance to patients diagnosed with the disease. As regards research, the foundation has contributed €500,000 to the Trinity College-based Discovery Research Consortium, and Dr. Sharon O'Toole will explain all the work being carried out by the Discovery Research Consortium. She will speak after me. Because we have fundraising activities in many places in Ireland, in Scotland, in New York, Melbourne, the foundation also funds related research in the University of Edinburgh and Monash University in Melbourne. As regards the practical component, we're delighted this year to be able to fund a gynae nurse specialist at CUMH, and that gynae nurse specialist is here today. Nurse Vicky Cleary is just sitting over there. CUMH is one of 4 designated areas, centres of excellence for gynae cancer, but it lacks the services of a gynae nurse specialist, and so Vicky is taking up that role, and we're delighted to be able to fund that post in CUMH. And we're a family-based charity with no administrative overheads, so every cent raised goes to carry out the work of the foundation. So our main focus is research, because when Emer passed away we felt that it was the poor relation, and that we would love a test to diagnose the disease in its early stages, and Discovery are working on that, and Sharon will tell you all about that now. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just get this computer. Oh, okay. It's very hard to follow the personal stories section, but I'll do my best. We're changing the scene slightly now to talk about some of the research that's been done. So as Brian said, I'm a scientist. I work with the Discovery Consortium in Trinity College. So I was just going to start a little bit with just some statistics on ovarian cancer, where we see about 190,000 cases worldwide. It's the fourth most common cancer in females, and in Ireland we see about 350 cases per annum. But this amounts to about 275 deaths from ovarian cancer each year in Ireland. And this is because 70% of the cases are diagnosed at an advanced stage. So ovarian cancer is often referred to as the silent killer. And this is just recent statistics, a report by the National Cancer Registry in Ireland, which shows that Ireland has the fourth highest incidence of ovarian cancer, but it has the leading mortality rates in 30 countries in Europe from ovarian cancer. So the National Cancer Control Programme in Ireland is addressing this by setting up these dedicated gynae cancer centres in Ireland. So what causes ovarian cancer? Well, we don't know what causes it, but we do know some risk factors for it. As in, the older you are, the more at risk you are from getting ovarian cancer. People who had no children have a higher risk of ovarian cancer. A late age at first birth, or if you start your periods earlier and have a later menopause. And this is all to do with the amount of ovulations that your ovaries go through every month. So every month the ovaries have to repair themselves. So the more ovulations you're going through, the more chance there is of mistakes to happen in these repairs. So these are often risk factors, and also if there's a family history of breast or ovarian cancer, it can be associated with a higher risk of getting ovarian cancer. And there are some other factors related to diet, environment, the use of talc powder, because in some tumours they found particles of talc, but there's not much evidence for some of these risk factors. And some of the protective factors are having children, the use of oral contraceptives, and this is all again related to the amount of ovulations that your ovaries go through. So the symptoms of ovarian cancer, and you'll probably hear more about this in the afternoon, but also SOC, one of the other ovarian cancer charities, has brought out a leaflet detailing the symptoms, because many people would say there's no symptoms in early ovarian cancer, but when you go back and ask patients, some of them might have had very vague symptoms like bloating, like a swollen abdomen, and you heard the story earlier of going to the toilet more often. So these are all things that if they're persistent and they're not going away, then you need to get them checked out by a doctor. And the SOC information leaflets are available at the desk later on. So I liked this thing because it said ovarian cancer, it whispers, so listen, because a lot of this is, so there can be symptoms early, and so knowing what's normal for you and knowing what's abnormal might help diagnose patients at an earlier stage. So I'm a member of the Discovery Consortium. There's over 50 members. It's headed up by Professor John O'Leary in Trinity College. It consists of gynecologists. And I said I'd explain what each of these terms are, because at a meeting recently, one lady asked, she had been through her cancer treatment, and she asked, what's an oncologist? Nobody had actually ever explained to her what an oncologist was. So the gynecologists are the surgeons who will operate on you. The oncologists are the doctors who will give you the chemotherapy. Pathologists are the ones who look down the microscope and make the diagnosis of cancer. Then you have scientists like me who are working in the lab trying to find newer tests for the disease. And then you have bioinformaticians, and a lot of the data we would generate, we might be looking at thousands and thousands of genes. So the bioinformaticians would write programs to help us analyse this data. So we work with all the colleges and all the hospitals in Ireland, and we're trying to, I suppose, involve everyone that's working in ovarian cancer into our consortium. And we also have collaborations in the US. And we maintain a bioresource in Trinity College in St James's, and this is where we take blood samples and tissue samples from all patients having surgery for suspected ovarian cancer. And this is a really valuable tool for all of our research, because we're able to compare profiles between patients, and patients who respond well, we can look back and see, well, what was different with them towards the ones that didn't respond well. So this is crucial for any research. And as Juliette said, we're funded by the Emer Casey Foundation. Emer died at a young age from ovarian cancer, and the foundation was set up in her memory, and they've been funding research with our group in Trinity College. And to date, they have funded 3 PhD fellowships, and I'll tell you a little about each one. 2 of them have completed, and the third guy is about to do his Viva, which is the exam for a PhD. He'll be doing that next month. And Mairead Murphy worked on developing some novel markers for blood tests to see if we could get a more accurate blood test for early ovarian cancer. Linda McAvoy worked at some of the tumours, when they grow back, become resistant to chemotherapy. And what Linda found was sometimes ovarian tumours can be quite large, and in the middle of that tumour there's not a lot of oxygen getting into the tumour, but the tumour cells have learned to survive in this low oxygen concentration. And what she found is the ones that could survive in this low oxygen concentration could also resist the chemotherapy that the patients were being given. So this is important work. And Brendan has been looking at cancer stem cells. And what are cancer stem cells? These are cells that have the ability to regrow the whole tumour. So if one of these cells are left behind, it has the potential to regrow the whole tumour. Now, when a pathologist is looking at these cells, they all look the same. So Brendan has been doing some important work to try and pick out which ones are the cancer stem cells, and how can we identify them, and how can we kill them. So that's some of his work. So I suppose as scientists, the challenges that we see in ovarian cancer is early stage disease, which has a good prognosis. It cannot be detected earlier with current tests. And the standard chemotherapy that patients are given often fails, and patients can develop recurrent disease, which often becomes resistant to chemotherapy. And currently there is no screening for ovarian cancer because we don't have an accurate enough tests available. Many of you have probably heard of CA125. It can be raised in some ovarian cancers, it may not be raised in others, and it can be raised by other conditions, and it's even raised in some healthy women. So this is not an accurate marker for screening of ovarian cancer. Now, there's a large trial going on in the UK at the moment, and it should give its results next year, and they've been looking at ultrasound in combination with the CA125, but what they're looking at is how this CA125 changes over time, as opposed to whether it's normal or abnormal. So they're looking at patterns of CA125. Now, everyone is kind of hoping that this will show some good results, and other people are saying that they don't hold up much hope for this trial, but we should know next year. They've screened over 200,000 women, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with this trial. So for us in Discovery, what have we been doing? In the area of diagnosis, as I said, Mairead Murphy has been working on autoantibody profiling. We're looking at some new markers, HE4, and these other markers, microRNAs and circulating tumour cells. Now I'll go through a little bit on each one of these, but the autoantibody profiles, this is where we take blood samples from healthy controls and compare them to blood samples for patients. And there's a technology we used called protein autoantibody arrays, and we do this in combination with a group in UCD. And this would be a typical result from one of these experiments where you see in the cancer patients these little dots light up, which shows that this lady has antibodies that the normal person doesn't have. So what we have now is a panel of these antibodies that were seen in early ovarian cancer patients, and we're going on to look at these in a wider group of patients to see if they hold up in a larger patient group. We're also looking at this marker called HE4, and this marker helps us distinguish some of the patients who have abnormal CA125 levels might have a normal HE4. So this marker, used in combination with CA125, helps to discriminate the malignant cases from the benign cases. And you can see here we see much higher levels in malignant cases than in benign cases. Also the area of circulating tumour cells and how cancers spread around the body. So to get from, let's say a tumour starts in your ovary, to get out of the ovary, it can spread along the peritoneal surface, and I'm sure Dr. Coulter will tell you a bit about that later, but it can also, these cells can also get into the blood system. And there is technologies now that have been developed which are able to isolate these cells from the blood system, and let us examine them more closely. So this is like searching for a needle in a haystack, but there's technologies now that have been developed that will allow us to take these blood circulating tumour cells out of the blood system and to prove that they are actually tumour cells. But we know also that platelets are part of your own blood system. We know they have a very important role to play now in the spread of tumours. So when the tumour cells get into the blood system, they are often cloaked with platelets, and this prevents the tumour cell from being recognised as something foreign in your own blood system. So it's hiding the tumour cells, and it's allowing the tumour cells to spread around the body by being covered in the platelets. And this is just some animal studies that have been done to prove this, where if they took the platelets out of the animal, they found that the tumours weren't able to set up in another organ. So they weren't able to spread and set up in a second site. So we do know that platelets are extremely important in the spread of tumours. And this is some work we have done where we have added tumour cells to platelets, and they normally, a couple of them will stick on to the tumour cells. But when we apply a force, so when the tumour cells are going around the body, the heart is pumping the blood around. So these cells are under what they call a shear force going around the body. And when we do that, we know that many of the platelets will attach to the tumour cells. So what we're doing, when these platelets are attached, they're telling the cells to survive. They're sending messages to them. And we've done a lot of work on this. So now work is focusing on, can we get these platelets off, or can we give patients antiplatelet therapies, and will this improve the spread of the tumours? And this is a company we're working with in Paris now, and they have developed a device for isolating these tumour cells from the blood system. And this is what we see here in this picture. These black dots are the little holes in the filters, and then we can capture these tumour cells on this filter. So the other area I suppose we are addressing in ovarian cancer is the area of chemoresistance, and why do these tumours develop resistance to the chemotherapy? And we've looked at many markers in this area, and some of them I'll just go through here. This is a very busy slide, but these are just some of the markers that we have found to be important. And how we found these was we compared tumour samples from patients whose tumour grew back and didn't respond to chemotherapy. We compared them with primary tumours whose tumours did respond to chemotherapy. And we found many genes were different, and many genes were much higher in the tumours that grew back. So what we've done now is we've taken some of those and we've added an inhibitor to some of those markers, and we found that we can increase the response of the tumours to the chemotherapy when we do that. And one of those markers is MMP9, and we've just published a paper earlier this year on that. We also have another marker called MYD88, and this is a typical slide that a pathologist, so the clinicians in the lab who will be saying whether this is a cancer sample or whether it's not, this is the typical thing they will see down a slide. This is what they have to look at, and they're able to say whether this is tumour or not. And then these little brown stains, these are some of the markers that we're looking at, and we look to see whether these are higher in tumours that don't respond or whether they're lower. And we have found some markers which we have published that we've found that patients who have high levels or low levels of certain markers have a worse outcome than others and don't respond as well to chemotherapy. So where do we go then with all these markers? Well, we have a panel now that we're looking for funding to go on and validate these in larger samples. So I've said we've found that they work in our group of samples. So now we have to go on and see that they work in a larger cohort of patients before they can be translated in the clinic. So we have many collaborations set up, and we're currently doing this work. So just finally then I just want to say that the 3 Irish ovarian cancer charities have got together for the very first World Ovarian Cancer Day. So you have Overcare, the Emer Casey Foundation and SOC, and you've probably heard of information about all 3. So the very first World Ovarian Cancer Day is taking place on May the 8th, and I suppose the idea is to unite and educate the communities about ovarian cancer and its symptoms, and to raise awareness of the disease, because many women don't know what ovarian cancer is, and many women also think that the smear test tests for ovarian cancer. So it's to get all this information out there to women on the day, and this will be an annual event. So what can you do for a World Ovarian Cancer Day? There's a website, ovariancancerday.org. Everyone is wearing teal. You'll have heard you all got your nail polish, the teal tips. So there's a teal tips campaign to get people wearing nail polish. There's some buildings that are going to light up in teal. The Mansion House in Dublin and the National Convention Centre have agreed to light up in teal for the day. There's the teal ribbons. And I went to some schools yesterday in Cork for the Emer Casey Foundation, and the girls in transition year are going to organise coffee mornings, invite in their mothers, aunts, sisters, and they're going to give out the information leaflets, and they're going to paint their nails teal. So there'll be a lot of activity around World Ovarian Cancer Day. And many of you might have seen yesterday in the Irish Independent this photograph of the 3 charities coming together wearing their teal nail varnish, just to get a bit of publicity out there for the launch of World Ovarian Cancer Day. And thank you for your attention. Okay. I will be available later for questions if anyone. I'll just invite Dr. Baban now to give his presentation.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today, and the stories are fantastic here. It's great. I actually took some time off from surgical work and did some research. One part of my project was in ovarian cancer, in collaboration with Dr. Coulter, who helped us a lot with his samples. Thanks to Dr. Coulter. Basically, I worked for Cork Cancer Research Centre. At the time, the late Professor O'Sullivan, may he rest in peace, he was a great admirer, and he worked very hard for cancer, and he was working at the Mercy Hospital at the time, and we have a centre in UCC, which is a bioscience institute where Cork Cancer Research Centre at the moment it works, and all the other hospitals, South Infirmary, Bon Secure, and CUH were involved in the work we did. And what's our focus was, it's a contribution to the development of the novel of anti-cancer treatment. It's a long road, we all know that. It's slow. When you go to research, you realize how slow life is. When you are doing surgery, Dr. Coulter will tell you how quick everything is. It's a very, very slow process. You come to a stage, you decide, I'm going to give up, it's not going to work. You come back next day, you start again from scratch, and you hit another wall, and you stop, and you start again. It's all the work is done by all these scientists. Sharon will know much about this better than anybody else. It's very, very difficult, slow work. But with the support of the families, with the support of all the clinicians, and with the help that we get, we are able to continue. And I don't think any medicine came to work up to now was done just by a chance. It needed lots of work, it needed lots of efforts, and it came to work. So how does it work? How does core cancer research work? Basically, we have a board of directors with scientific advisory board, we have development board, and we have the research program, which will include the clinicians, the translationals, and the basic researchers. What we did, we worked in different kinds of cancer. Most of my work was in breast cancer and with some ovarian cancer work done. And Professor Sullivan at the time was mostly involved in the GI and esophageal cancer when he was working in the Mercy at the time. Where do we get our sources? Well, the income is coming from different sources. We get grants from Science Foundation Ireland, Irish Cancer Society, philanthropy, patients come in, just donate monies. I've seen so many people come in and say, well, this was the funeral of Mary Murphy and there was a donation of €250 and they just bring it to the cancer research, and we just delighted with those incomes that's coming through the door, and it makes a big difference. Then fundraising effects, there are lots of done especially for core cancer research, where we have a Kerry walk and we have lots of other fundraising. How does science research basically work? So somebody comes up with an idea and say, well, I have an idea, what we need money. Okay, where do we get the money? Okay, somebody start to work, do some research on that. Some discovery will come up, some invention, some come up, and this will go to a new technology. And it's basically 3 stages of technological advancement. Stage 1, we say, forget it, it's not possible, that's not going to happen. Stage 2, it could happen, it's a possibility there, it's too difficult, but I don't think it's worth it, we better leave it alone. And stage 3, where we say, oh, I knew it's going to happen, and I was the one who invented it. How do we go back to look back at 3,000 years ago, where the physician in Mesopotamia and Egypt, they treated patients with cancer, and they used herbal drugs and salts and all different kind of things. And we hear now that actually one of the tombs of the pharaohs, the skull, there was a cancer in that, there was a sarcoma in a patient who had a cancer. When was it treated, wasn't treated, but the patient had the person had a cancer, which is very interesting nowadays. We look back and say, well, cancer is only 50 years? No, it's not. It's 3,000 years old, even more that we know about. Lots of progress has been done in the past 25 years, and we know that everything is progressing very fast, and we say, oh God, technology is going very fast and all this. But when we look back again, we say, how many treatments we got for ovarian cancer, for example, how much treatment we give for breast cancer, for example. We still at very early stage, I think. Our novel method that we use in core cancer research, it involves a couple of things. We are targeting gene and we're targeting drug delivery, basically. What we are using is a bacterial delivery, and we're using electroporation. Everybody will have a bad idea about the bacteria. Oh God, bacteria infection is terrible. What we are using is a probiotic. Every day we drink probiotics and we say, oh, it's great, our commensal bacteria are getting better and we are stronger and everything. We are using those bacteria for our work, which are the good bacteria or the friendly bacteria. Other groups in our lab works on different cell death mechanisms and immune stimulation, basically. How does the gene therapy works? We know that therapeutic chemicals, they are toxic. We know all these kind of things about it. But what we do is we deliver this kind of a gene to a patient, which will lead the patient itself to produce these therapeutics. So it's kind of a change in the DNA from that point of view. Again, back to the same point that we used electrochemotherapy, and that's in an advanced stage, and we're using bacteria as well, which is in an early stage yet. So the dairy products that every day we drink or we use, we are using these basically. What we are able to establish at the moment is a model that an animal would have some sort of a cancer, ovarian cancer, with ascites, with all the problems that the human being will have, and we are able to work on these at the moment. And it's still in early stages, but there is lots of work is being done trying to treat these, and I'm very optimistic from the work that I did for the past 3 years that something good will come out from this at the moment. We have so many papers published, especially with the probiotics and the use of the bacteria in yogurt, the way that we described it, and a couple of newspapers, Irish Times and Independent, how the good friendly bacteria are able to circulate in the body, go live in the tumor area, and we are able to use these bacteria, give them some sort of put some treatment in those one, let them go to the tumor area and do the job that we want them to do. I leave you the last with a picture of Professor James Watson and his discovery of DNA when he was visiting in 2010 Cork, and the late Professor O'Sullivan just next to him there. And I think their work wasn't just by chance. They didn't just find something in a day or night. It took them a long time to do their work, and that's part of our team. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sharon and Shwanro. I thought a couple of interesting things. Just when Sharon spoke about the research that was being undertaken by the Discovery Project, and we saw and heard about the fascinating work undertaken by Mairead Murphy, Linda McAvoy, and Brendan French. I suppose that the real message here is that the funding that comes into the Discovery Project, it's a very good model for how charitable fundraising and research studies can work hand in hand, and that one can't happen without the other. And it further shows how, I suppose, vital charitable fundraising is going to be in the continuing essential research. Today's research is about shaping the future treatments for ovarian cancer, and particularly in the current economic climate, when money is tight, it's fantastic to see that funding is still being made available for research projects. Dr. Baban has shown the enormous collaboration that's involved in successful research. He also spoke about, I suppose, how slow the pace of research can be, and I think for me that was very encouraging, because in the current world we live in now, we want instantaneous, speedy responses and information and instant access to everything. And in doing that, sometimes we don't necessarily always get the right result. With research, it needs to be slow. It needs to be done right, because there's so much involved, and there's so much. We're expecting so much from it that when it does yield a result, we want it to be a sustainable result. So, again, on behalf of everybody, I want to thank both speakers and also Juliet Casey for coming on this morning. So well done, and thank you all for that. Next bit is where we're going to do some workshops, and this is. There'll be a workshop here, and there'll be a workshop in the room next door. And these workshops this morning are going to be run by Ellen Joyce and Fiona Moriarty from the Cork Arc Cancer Support House.